Welcome to the God's Word News Service with your host Bishop Grigor.
Good evening, or good day, depending on when you are watching this. I am Bishop Grigori, your host for this episode of the God's Word News Service Bishop's Report. This is the third and final part to the series. Do you know what time it is? Many of you will find the content of this video to be very disturbing, to say the least. And for that, I do not apologize, because there are times when people need to be hit by hard truths and facts to motivate them into real action. Fortunately, many people are finally beginning to wake up to what is really happening, both here in America and the rest of the world. They are finally seeing who is really running the show and what their true agenda is. However, the problem is that many seem to lack the will, the courage to rise up and fight back, while many others are of the belief that if they keep their mouths shut and do as they are told, they won't be affected by the horror show that is fast approaching, not only here in America, but the entire world. How wrong they are, because through their silence and inaction, they are showing that they consent to the evils taking place, while others see what is happening, but due to the scales covering their eyes, they are seeing the world through a glass darkly, and simply do not understand nor comprehend what is really going on, nor do they really care to. For some people, it is hard for them to wrap their minds around what is really happening. Some can, but fear keeps them from admitting it even to themselves. But there is a time fast approaching when we, all of humanity, will be forced to make a choice as to who we will follow. Will you choose to follow God, or will you choose to follow Satan? That, folks, is a decision that is yours and yours alone to make. I can only sound a warning. As shocking and unbelievable as it may sound, everything that is occurring in America and around the world today is not happening by chance. We are being and have always been played and manipulated according to well laid out plans that were set into motion eons ago. As hard as it is to believe, all of our lives are being and have always been controlled by just a few men and women whose bloodlines go way back to the very beginning of human history. They are members of an elite group whose ancestors plotted and schemed exactly as they do today, with their ultimate goal being to wrest total and complete control over the entire world. And that includes you and I, and every generation that comes after us, or what is left of them as far as the humanity goes. Their schemes and plots affect all levels of humanity, from birth to death and everything in between. Watch what comes over the mass media, news outlets, and what do you see? Day in and day out, we are fed a daily diet of wars, disease, abject poverty, man against man. And in many countries, we see billions of poor people, young and old, displaced from their homes and lands by the elite power brokers. And we watch as these elite super rich get ever richer. All around us, we see a complete moral, ethical, spiritual corruption and breakdown of every area of our government and of society, not to mention the moral and spiritual corruption of America's children taking place in our public and many private schools, happening openly right in front of our noses, not just here, but around most of Western Europe. And if there are any of you who think I'm exaggerating, Please forgive me for getting rather crude and blunt and graphic. But here is an example of what I'm talking about. This particular incident happened in Australia, but very similar incidents are happening right here in America and in many schools in Western Europe. Here is what one 10-year-old girl was told to ask her father as part of her homework assignment. A worksheet was handed out to a class of 10-year-old girls, according to information given to the Minister of Education by the father of one of the girls. According to the father, part of her homework was to discuss his erections and ejaculations with her. Needless to say, the father stated that he is disturbed and sickened by this, and that he complained to the school and was told it was, quote, just part of the curriculum. When speaking to the Parliament of Australia, where the Minister of Education, Labour MP James Merlino, read the father's letter, he furiously turned on the chamber and asked, quote, what the hell is going on in this state? When 10-year-old girls are told to go home and talk to their father about his erections and ejaculations. What the hell is going on here? How the hell are we supposed to protect our kids when this sort of perversion is in our schools? This is the kind of filth that is being forced on our children on a daily basis in our primary and secondary schools. There's a serious epidemic of child pornography here in the U.S. and around the world, which is growing exponentially along with child sex trafficking. Here in the U.S., many parents are standing up in righteous anger at their local school boards for allowing books containing some of the absolute worst pornographic pictures and stories being made available to very young children in school libraries and classrooms. But from the reactions or lack thereof on the part of the school board members, it shows that parents have no say-so as to what is to be taught in their children's schools, nor do they have any right to speak out against it, even though it is their tax money that is paying for the education system. And if they do have the audacity to speak out, they are often forcibly removed from the school board meetings by law enforcement officers and listed by the government's Department of Justice as being domestic terrorists, opening them up to being spied on and investigated by the FBI, and in some cases, having their children removed from their home by the Child Protective Services, again under orders issued by the FBI. What can you expect when the likes of someone like former Virginia gubernatorial candidate Terry McAuliffe said he didn't, quote, think parents should be telling schools what they should teach, end of quote. Or Joe Biden, the president of the U.S., who on Wednesday, April 27th, 2022, during a White House event honoring the 2022 National and State Teachers of the Year, tells the teachers, quote, they're all our children, and the reason you're the Teachers of the Year is because you recognize that. They're not somebody else's children. They're like yours when they're in the classroom, end of quote. This from a senile old man with a penchant of sniffing the hair of underage little girls. And whether you choose to admit it or not, along with the many other evils that abound in the world today, we are in a physical and spiritual war with the satanically controlled leftists fighting for control of our children. The leftists feel feel that they have the absolute right to brainwash and indoctrinate the youth into their sick and demented world where there are no boundaries whatsoever, a world where anything goes. No boundaries means there are no absolutes and everything is relative. This war for the minds and souls of children and youth is of such extreme importance that goes far beyond teaching them to be kind to those who are different. The most insidious and dangerous thing facing America's and the world's children today in our schools and in the media and in the entertainment industry is the radical LGBTQ plus agenda, because it's not just about accepting gay marriage, the homosexual lifestyle, and transgenderism. It's about pushing every sexual taboo and boundary known to mankind until they are all mainstream, and that includes pedophilia. Since the members of the LGBTQ community are incapable of producing offspring of their own, what better way is there of growing their numbers than by going after other people's children? They have already forced the enactment of laws allowing them to become foster parents and to adopt children. But that wasn't enough for them. So now they are hell-bent on corrupting as many other children to their unnatural and deviant lifestyle through their indoctrination and brainwashing agenda in our public and private schools, along with the transgender story hour being held in public libraries all around the country. And look how many parents go along with it and bring their little ones to these abominations. 10 or 15 years ago, did you ever dream that it would be considered normal to teach children that men can have periods and give birth? Or for that matter, how many parents ever dreamed that it would become necessary to teach your children how to masturbate? Just a month ago, there was a report on the internet about 3 women from an evangelical church group who started a summer camp for boys and girls between the ages of 7 and 13 to teach them how to properly masturbate. Imagine a so-called Christian church doing this. From pre-K to 12th grade, your children are being exposed to inappropriate sexual material during school classes. They are often probed and prodded to reveal their own private sexual lives and the sexual lives and habits of their family members. And at least one true Christian leader had the courage to speak out and name the worst offenders seeking to pervert and harm our kids. And that courageous Christian is James Dobson, the founder of Family Talk Radio and the James Dobson Family Institute. In his latest newsletter, Dobson warned his constituents about the danger of Joe Biden's transgender plans for America. Dobson cited a number of headlines reflecting Biden's campaigning for the scientifically failed concept that males can become female or females can become male, including Indiana activists to host sex ed kink camp for children grades 3 to 5. Dobson stated, "If this does not raise your dander and drive you to your knees in fervent prayer for the morality of our country and the welfare of our youth, I don't know what will. I have long stated that sins committed against children are the most grievous. That is why I believe our Lord made the following statement. It would be better for him if a millstone were hung around his neck and he were cast into the sea than that he should cause one of these little ones to sin." That's from Luke chapter 17, verse 2. He went on to say, quote, "And yet the worst offender seeking to pervert and harm our kids is not a corporation or a school board. It is our current president and his administration. As I shared in a recent statement, President Biden and his administrative agencies are determined to push America totally off its moral ledge as they take full aim at dismantling the mental, physical, and spiritual welfare of our children. End of quote. And in his commentary titled, quote, "The Truth About Transgenderism," Dobson says the whole topic about transgenderism is as utterly preposterous as it is egregious. As Christians, we can and should show compassion for anyone wrestling with the condition of gender dysphoria. However, if we truly care for someone, we will speak truth into their lives. This is what makes the issue so morally confounding: the absolute abandonment of truth for the sake of wokeness. The idea that a man can believe his way into becoming a woman is medically unfounded. A person's psychological mindset cannot change his or her biological makeup. As Dr. Paul McHugh, professor of psychiatry at the Johns Hopkins University of Medicine, has stated, quote, "Transgendered men do not become women, nor do transgendered women become men. All, including Bruce Jenner, become feminized men or masculinized women. Counterfeits or impersonators of the sex which they identify. In that lies their problematic future. It is true that medicine can alter the physical appearance of someone, but it can never reassign one's sex. The results of such an agenda are devastating and nothing less than child abuse. The worst part of all this," Dobson pointed out, "was that President Biden had the absolute audacity to invoke God's name on behalf of this wickedness. In a video statement, he addressed transgendered Americans and stated, quote, "Our entire administration sees you for who you are, made in the image of God and deserving of dignity, respect, and support." Of course, President Biden is correct when he quotes Genesis chapter 1, verse 27, and says those who experience gender dysphoria, along with all human beings, are made in the image of God. Yet, in saying this, it is ironic in the most sickening sense that Biden is encouraging these same young people to rebel against God's image, imprinted upon their very beings. In this failed attempt for him to appear holy and pious, President Biden conveniently omits the second half of the verse he quotes, which says, "Male and female he created them." No one should distort the Lord's very words in this way. President Biden would do well to remember that God will not be mocked. Here is what the Orthodox Church has to say about transgenderism. According to the canons, the laws of the Orthodox Church, the act of becoming a eunuch is a grave sin. When one takes the time to really think about it, becoming completely transgendered is the same as becoming a eunuch. So why is it considered a grave sin? Because in so doing, one makes himself an enemy of God's creation. Quote, "For God created him a man, complete with genitals, and female with ovaries and a womb, to carry a child to term and give birth. But by removing these, they convert themselves into an odd and outlandish nature, since they are now neither a man, because they cannot perform the chief functions of a man and beget a human being like themselves, nor again are they a woman, because she is incapable of undergoing the duties of a woman, or more explicitly speaking, she cannot be made pregnant and give birth to children like women. But after a certain fashion, they are a third kind of monster, and are, so to speak, a being intermediated between the male and female species of mankind. End of quote. And that was quoted from Canon 22 of the Rudder, the Canons of the Orthodox Church. Wake up, because before you realize it, your child will have been professionally groomed by progressive perverts in the classroom, masquerading as teachers, principals, and school administrators. If we don't save our nation's children from this evil manipulation, mental, spiritual, and in some cases, physical abuse, we will lose another generation of our precious children. And as a nation, we are doomed. How many of these children will then face a future of depression, drug use, or worse yet, suicide? The corruption of children isn't the only problem and threat facing our country and the world, though it is by far the worst. Now, there was a time back when I was a child that we could honestly say that the government was a government by the people, for the people, and of the people. But something began to change, slowly and incrementally at first, but around the mid-1960s and early 70s, we really began our downward slide, which began to pick up speed. The United States of today is totally alien to the people of my generation. Oh, sure, we have always had dishonest politicians as well as degenerate citizens, but nothing like what we have today. The leaders of today's America have perfected the art of lying and cheating to the point of doing it so insanely and without the slightest twinge of embarrassment when their lies and degenerate behavior are exposed to the public. The ruling elite are true sociopathic, self-absorbed individuals who lack any real human emotions, human feelings, such as empathy for the suffering of others, or even true feelings of love, even when it comes to their own families. Many of them treat their own families as just another means to an end. That will benefit only themselves. With this being true, what makes anyone think that those in power and control have any kind of genuine concern for their fellow citizens, or any real patriotic pride and love for their own country? There are lawyers and so-called constitutional scholars who will vehemently disagree with what I am about to say, but I don't care. I call them as I see them. We had 8 long years under a faux president, a man whose real identity and real place of birth has never been proven. Barack Hussein Obama, who, even if he was born in Hawaii, as he claims, was still not constitutionally eligible to hold the office of president because he did not meet the constitutional requirement of being a natural-born citizen, since his father, according to his own words, was never a citizen of the United States. The very fact that the Democrat Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, illegally put pen to paper signing her name, attesting that Obama was duly vetted and found to be constitutionally eligible to be President of the United States, and the utter failure of the rest of Congress as well as the courts, refusing to stand up for the truth, created a real constitutional crisis in the United States that has persisted to this present day. It was Obama and his FAR administration, made up of the likes of Hillary Clinton, Joseph Biden, a known liar and bigoted racist, whom Obama picked as his vice president, as well as a whole load of members of radical Muslim Brotherhood that started the real downfall of the United States. It was under his FAR administration that America started to become more divided than at any other time. It was Obama who began to allow the biggest influx of illegal immigrants to flow into the U.S. across our southern border. It was Obama who pitted the citizens against the police, whites against blacks and Hispanics, setting race relations back decades. He pitted men against women, straights against gays. During his campaign speech, he constantly bragged about how he was going to fundamentally change America. But nobody bothered to question him as to what he meant by that. Today, we can all see the results of what he meant. Obama and the rest of the Democrats sincerely believed that Hillary Clinton would be the winner of the 2016 presidential election. They were so confident that they actually looked upon Donald J. Trump as a joke and an incompetent idiot. It came as a total shock to them when Trump beat them, even though they started plotting against Trump and his campaign as an insurance policy to keep him out of the presidency. What few realized at the time was that Hillary was supposed to win and finish carrying out the plans that Obama put in place for the destruction of the United States. Thus, in essence, giving Obama a third term, albeit in name only. When it turned out that Trump won, it threw a monkey wrench into the plans of the leftists, which completely infuriated them and brought about the rise of the infamous Trump derangement syndrome, which caused the entire Obama FAR administration to go into overdrive to come up with plans to destroy Trump and his administration even before it got started. President-elect Trump had picked a truly patriotic person, General Michael Flynn, to be his head national security advisor, who promised to weed out and remove all of the deep state traitors. Obama and Hillary began to set their plans in motion, going after and attacking General Flynn and using the FBI and Justice Department to entrap him. The prosecution of Flynn was far from a pursuit to go after criminal activity. It was a setup to actually bring down Trump himself and his entire administration. This led to a string of false accusations of wrongdoing against Trump and 2 bogus impeachment trials in the hopes of getting Trump removed from office. All based on one lie after another, and absolutely no evidence of any wrongdoing by Trump or anyone connected with his campaign or administration. Yet Obama and the rest of the Democrats persisted in their false investigations, using the U.S. intelligence community at taxpayers' expense to go after Trump and anyone connected to him, And they went on television day after day and lied to the American people, to their faces, knowing that they would not face any consequences. When it looked like it was going to be a shoo-in that Trump was going to be reelected in 2020, the left, with the help of the global elite, attacked the American people in a way that had never been done before in the history of the United States. Using the man-made COVID virus to install draconian restrictions on the movements and freedoms of the American people in violation of the Constitution. They used fear and threats to shut down businesses, schools, etc., and to keep people in a state of lockdown, mask wearing, to hinder verbal communication between people, along with strict social distancing, and dictating how many people could attend church services and how a church could conduct masses and other services. And this was especially done in the Democrat-controlled states and cities, all as a means of keeping the boot of tyranny on the necks of their citizens. They instituted mail-in voting as well as online voting to control the 2020 election process. They covered all their bases so that even on election night, when Trump was beating Biden, Obama's sock puppet, they made sure that Biden would win come hell or high water. When it came to the actual counting of the ballots, the left refused to allow the Republican-appointed monitors into the buildings, and those that did get in had to stand at a distance so as to make it difficult to see what was going on at the machines. They even taped large sheets of cardboard over the windows to prevent anyone from looking in to see what was really going on. Then the left shut down the counting of the ballots in key swing states and had everyone leave the places where the counting was taking place. One location even used a false excuse that there was a water leak in the building to get the counters to leave for the night. Once the coast was clear, they were caught on camera pulling suitcases of fraudulent ballots out from under tables and other hiding places and began feeding them into the ballot counting machines. Often the same ballots being fed through 3 or 4 times. They got hackers in foreign countries like Italy and Germany to hack into the electronic voting machines, which were illegally connected online, to switch votes from Trump to Biden. They were also running illegal counterfeit ballots, all marked for Biden and signed with fraudulent signatures, many of them dead people, and of people who no longer lived in the districts or states that the votes were being counted. Many of the ballots that were marked for Biden were being run through the machine several times over, and many ballots marked for Trump were never counted or were destroyed. The next morning, when the ballot counting was resumed, Americans were shocked to see that Biden was way ahead of Trump in the count from the night before, when the counting was supposedly halted for the night. All of this was bad enough, but when Congress went ahead and declared and certified Biden and Kamala Harris to be the winners, knowing full well that there was massive voter fraud committed by the Democrats, this was the ultimate act of high treason against the Constitution, the citizens of, and the country of the United States. And the left has gotten away with it. Today, our nation is being run by people who have no problem looking right into a television camera, or for that matter, right into the eyes of the American people and lie so blatantly without a flicker of shame. And Joe Biden is by far one of the worst liars ever to serve in high office in America. Many people, especially politicians, lie when they have to cover up some crime or sin or failing. However, Biden, much like Hillary Clinton and members of Congress, lie just for the sake of lying, almost on a daily basis. Biden makes things up that never actually happened, not to cover up some failure or embarrassment, but just because he loves to lie. But he's not alone. His constitutionally illegal Vice President, Kamala Harris, she is not a natural born citizen either, is the exact same way, which shows that birds of a feather do flock together. And that flock includes the likes of Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Adam Schiff, and Jerry Nadler, etc. And this is the stuff that sociopaths are made from. Normal, everyday people, even though they lie, cannot lie like a sociopath. The inner conflict with their conscience would drive them crazy. Our conscience is a gift from our Creator that tells us that what we are doing or contemplating on doing is wrong, so that we could change course. Sadly, the leftists have so numbed and anesthetized their conscience that it has been placed into a permanent coma, so that it no longer is capable of functioning. So how does the left get away with all their lies? There are a number of ways. The author of the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson, warned, quote, "The only security of all is in a free press," end of quote. But sad to say, today's press is made up almost entirely of lying, corrupt, self-serving cheerleaders for the communist New World Order revolution, which is spurred on by today's big tech, international bankers and corporation totalitarians, extolling the dubious virtues of the Democrats' insane, delusional, and destructive agenda.